Welcome to the February 16th meeting of the Fitchburg City Council's Legislative Affairs Committee. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. And I would ask that anyone else who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves for the record now by standing and stating their name and city of residence.
Jessica Jacobson.
Pittsburgh.
Thank you. Just to repeat for the record, Jessica Jacobson of Fitchburg recording the meeting. At this time, I would ask again that all electronic devices be placed in silent mode. Members present this evening are Councillor Cruz, Councillor Kucher, myself, President Zarella, and Vice President Van Hazinga. At this time, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, the public had been advised to contact the city clerk's office regarding comments of no more than 2 minutes. We do have one person calling in remotely on the flag issue. As I stated before recording began, we are going to split up public comment. So we will take up comment on the flag issue specifically after we deal with 04023, the wage ordinance. However, as the gentleman in the front has indicated that he will not be able to stay that long, I will ask him if he would like to make his remarks at this time.
My name is Ian and I live in Fitchburg. Being on the spectrum, I tend to read and study about a lot of different and sometimes useless information. Vexillology is the study of flags. Every color, every line, every mark has a specific meaning. Just because there's a bunch of colored stripes doesn't mean it's all about gayness. I have a gay uncle and a gay aunt, and I'm okay with that. I still love them both. However, I and most others are so tired of going to school and having these flags waved in our faces as well as around our town. They don't represent my sexuality or my ideology. I can't even voice or show what I stand for without backlash. Everything about this flag has shown nothing but name-calling and hatred to those who have a different view. I have actually been physically assaulted over this. As for a committee who is trying to change flag laws to fit their agendas, this is causing more separation, discrimination, and hatred. Well, that needs to stop. You are causing harm to kids. This is our life, my life, and the future of my sisters. Stop putting your ideologies on all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And have a great evening. At this time, is there anyone here who would like to comment on 04023, the ordinance regarding the wage rate for temporary seasonal employees? Mr. DiNatale, welcome.
Marcus DiNatale, Fitchburg, Mass. Just asking for your support of this ordinance. Long overdue. As you all are aware, last year we had significant difficulty in hiring temporary seasonal workers for the DPW. I know the budget has been dramatically increased over the last several years, so it's not a budget issue, it's an employment issue. And it's been determined that the wage rates for what we are seeking for the employment are below market standards. So raising this will certainly assist in getting more bodies on the ground, specifically in cemetery and parks, as we all know. Parks especially need a lot of tender and care, and seasonal help will certainly help that end. So I wholeheartedly endorse this, and hope you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further on this issue? All right, then I will place before the committee 04023, an ordinance, Chapter 44, Section 10 of the Code of the City of Fitchburg, as most recently amended, shall be amended by striking where applicable the current rates for temporary seasonal employees and inserting in its place the attached table of wage rates to be in compliance with minimum wage laws. I have a communication, sorry, one moment. I have a communication from Susan Davis, the Director of Human Resources, requesting that we amend the language of the petition, striking the phrase "to be in compliance with minimum wage laws" and replacing it with "to remain competitive with the current labor market."
So moved.
I have a motion and second. If there is no objection, we'll take this by unanimous consent. It is approved, and the petition as amended is before the committee. Would you like to come up and say a few words? You don't have to, but.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm pretty much going to echo what Councillor DiNatale said. We did have tremendous difficulty, not only with the temporary laborers in terms of, the DPW, but also the recreation positions as well. We actually weren't even able to have the pool open for the hours that it should have been and with the schedule. So these rates will put us certainly in a place to be able to attract as well as retain on an annual basis, because a lot of the kids will, work and then come back. And so I don't know if Nick came up with that or James Bunnell, who's the rec director, but we're also adding 50 cents for a returning employee. So if they've worked for the rec department, they can return and get 50 cents more an hour. So we're hoping to, bridge some of this gap in a great way and, maybe forge some good relationships within the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything to add?
Sure. So just to add, just to give you an idea of what we were able to hire last year for these positions, we had a few hires in the cemetery division as temporary seasonal laborers, which was fantastic, but we were unable to find anyone that applied for the parks division, streets division, water division. So we lost out on a lot of seasonal temp help there. Our guys picked up the slack with overtime hours, which costs us a lot more money in the long run to get the same amount of work done. And then on the recreation side, we typically aim to have 8 to 10 lifeguards at the pool to staff the hours that we'd like to keep the pool open. We were only able to find 3 applicants last year, which significantly limited the hours that we were able to keep the pool open. In addition to that, it puts a large burden on those 3 kids for all intents and purposes. And it opens up a significant amount of liability on the city's end because it is a swimming pool, and the staff there are heavily relied upon. So I think what we're proposing here in this table makes us much more competitive with other cities and towns around here, like Leominster. The state also operates a pool in the city of Fitchburg, and their rates are right around where we're proposing to adjust the rates to. So I would ask for your support in getting this approved tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Van Hazinga?
I just like to say it's important that we fill these positions. It's terrible when we're not allowed to offer these recreational facilities in the summer for the kids, but also the lack of DPW staffing has a real impact on what we can do. I mean, when the lawns don't get mowed at Coolidge and the weeds don't get cleaned up along Main Street and other areas of the city that need to be done that really are typically taken on by seasonal work, the city suffers. So I'm glad that we're making this move to be competitive, and I support it. Thank you.
Councillor Kuchar?
I, too, am glad to see the wages going up for these temporary workers. My one question to you is, what is the age that somebody can start working for in one of these?
DPW is 18.
Okay.
No questions, or there's no leeway there.
Obviously, yes. But I mean, the
lifeguards are 16. You
16?
16, yep.
Okay. What about just regular? Like I know, like if somebody gets a permit, they can work at like 15 and a half, something like that.
We do that now. They need to get work permits.
They need to get a work permit.
Yep,
okay.
For that, and that's what.
And how strict is the 15 and a half? Like, Do they have to be 15 and 6 months, or can they be 15 and 4 months?
It's 15.6. So it definitely, their hours are actually, I don't know off the top of my head.
I know they're
unfortunately,
limited. They
what
can't work
exactly the
yeah.
hours are, but we have to abide by that, obviously.
Okay.
And that makes it tough when you don't have enough staff.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
okay, all right.
Yep.
All right, yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Cruz.
Thank you, President Zarella. Yeah, I too am happy to see this going up. You see it even across the private sector. You could get a job, in the fast food industry, and I'm a former fast food worker myself, and it's a far less responsibility than, say, being a lifeguard, where you have, kids' lives are at stake, and you've got to take a test, and you've got to pass, and you've got to be a good swimmer. It'd be much easier for a kid to go flip burgers for a summer and make the same amount. So let's make sure they're being paid appropriately. Yield the floor. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second. I will note for the record that we now have Councillor Cragen joining us as well. And if there is no objection, we'll take this by unanimous consent. Seeing none, 04023 is unanimously recommended for approval. We now have 03623, an ordinance that the following be added as Chapter 319 to the Fitchburg City Code, with following sections of the chapter renumbered accordingly as in the enclosed ordinance. 319 commemorative flags. We will now have public comment on this matter. Again, if you have any comment you would like to give, please approach the center podium. Identify yourself by name and city of residence, and you may speak for not more than 2 minutes.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Alexander Vera. I'm here from the city of Fitchburg, and I'm the current president of the Rotary Club of Fitchburg. I stand before you on behalf of the Rotary Club of Fitchburg in regards to the flagpole specifically at Riverfront Park. As one of the only 2 non-government organizations recognized by the United Nations and the only non-government organization with a seat at the United Nations and partner organization to the United States of America. Today, Rotary holds the highest consultative status offered to a non-governmental organization by the UN's Economic and Social Council, which oversees many specialized UN agencies. The flagpole was erected in 2017 with the purpose of flying both the U.S. flag and Rotary International flag. Rotary International would like to see our flag flying underneath the United States flag at Riverfront Park on the flagpole donated by the Rotary Club of Fitchburg and Fitchburg East, along with other various donations made to Riverfront Park. To recap, I am requesting, per the original agreement that was made when the flagpole was purchased, to have the Rotary International flag as the only other flag to fly at Riverfront Park, an organization recognized worldwide as a symbol of peace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacqueline Wenchie, Fitchburg resident, speaking on 03623. We already have a city flag ordinance put in place in January. The reason some of you are challenging it is that you want to fly the flags of certain constituents but not others. This is favoritism. It's like you think that you get to pick your constituents. That's backwards. As voters, your constituents get to pick you, and you should represent them all. You want as few as 6 people, a majority in the council, to determine, quote, the official sentiments of the city, end quote. But a city is not a group of officials. A city is all the people residing in the community. It's like a church. It doesn't consist of just the clergy, but of all the congregants. This is just an odd ordinance. We already fly the flag at half-staff if someone dies, so what other reason would you have to rush through a flag flying to avoid, quote, undue harm? All I can think is the Chinese balloon. Do you think they're going to invade and we'll need to fly a white surrender flag and it can't wait until the next council meeting? The fact that none of the sponsors of this ordinance are attorneys shows this would open a Pandora's box of litigation. You'll be forever trying to placate one group or another. Why should the city go around expressing official sentiments on everything under the sun? You should focus on basics, like getting the roads paved and the trash picked up. Everyone has their own opinions. Everyone has their own opinions and they don't need yours. Let people fly their own flags on their own properties, or let Fitchburg State fly them on their campus. We gave them our civic center and other freebies, and they pay us nothing in lieu of taxes. Maybe they could help us out by taking over the flag flying. It's about time they did something for the city.
Further public comment?
Jessica Jacobson, Fitchburg. Please define other flags in this ordinance. Having it simply other flags opens the door to discriminatory flags. As a public official, you have a duty to uphold the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the Constitution of the United States. You have a sworn oath of office that by choosing to pass this, you will be failing to uphold, completely ignoring your oath of office. You will be choosing your political power and authority to spread discrimination by either race, sexuality, or religion back into public spaces at your discretion and calling it government speech. Here's your oath of office in case you forgot it. I do solemnly promise and swear that I will faithfully and impartially and to the best of my knowledge and ability discharge all the duties incumbent on me. By choosing to pass this, you will be failing to uphold and completely ignoring the discrimination policy of City of Fitchburg, where, as a representative of the Commonwealth and legal representative of the City of Fitchburg, you have a legal obligation to create public spaces free from all discrimination. You'll be choosing to fail us by not only creating reasonable discrimination-free accommodations in public spaces for the tax-paying customers who call Fitchburg their home. You will be penalizing its employees, the residents, by taking away their freedom of speech and replacing it with government speech. For example, one sexuality flag is being displayed by the City of Fitchburg in public schools, public parks, and public areas, making families and students who do not fall under that particular sexuality uncomfortable and underrepresented. Students have been penalized in Fitchburg public schools for having different religious, moral, sexuality beliefs. By allowing the City Council to have freewheeling discretion over which flag should fly, it's sure to generate more controversy in the future. For every flag that gets flown, there will be some people who support it and many who do not. The City Council will be seen as taking sides continually on political and cultural issues. This proposed ordinance will create division of Fitchburg, not unity. The proposed ordinance will also waste valuable time and resources that the City Council could better be spent on fixing real issues.
Your time has expired.
I'm almost done. Every hour that is spent in debating what flag shouldn't fly in Fitchburg is an hour that is not spent on truly improving the lives of the people of Fitchburg. Keep it simple and just fly the flags everyone can agree on. The American flag, the state flag, the city flag, the POW flag, the Rotary flag wasn't on my list, but I'll add that one. And only flags that don't discriminate against religion, race, or sexuality should be flown in public spaces. Some of you have proven you cannot make unbiased decisions already on this matter. The end.
Macklin Air. People are lining up, and I'm one of them, and if the three council persons that think they want to override the mayor and the people's voice, I am for everybody, sexual preference, the people that have struggled, LGBT and all of that, for their rights and the horrors that have happened, and I support all of their efforts to have rights and equality. But what's happened here is going above and beyond and completely discriminatory. So if you want to vote in your council ordinance, I'm lining up, and here's a flag that you can vote on. Right here. Picking and choosing the flags that you want to decide without the people's voices, it's not going to happen because the people are not going to stand for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't prepare any comments. My name is Josiah Richards. I live at 199 Fisher Road. I am one of the residents of Fitchburg that I think everybody has so articulated here tonight. I support the expression, the freedom of expression, and I feel like public flagpoles provide a voice for the residents of the city who don't often get heard. And I respect everybody's opinion, But I feel like a public space, and it doesn't take an hour to decide to raise a flag or not, it is not uncommon for communities across the Commonwealth or the entire country to raise a flag periodically for causes and issues and people that the city and the residents represent. So whether it's the flagpole at Riverfront Park or in front of City Hall, I feel like if somebody wants to petition to raise a flag, they can do that. I support the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, and I think anybody should be able to raise a flag if they request that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jean. I live in Fitchburg. I just wanted to reiterate what my grandson had to say. When I talked to him about what was going on, he said, I have something to say because I'm affected by this. He is physically attacked. He got drop kicked in the back the other day because he believes in the family unity. Neither of us, I don't teach my grandchildren to discriminate against one group or another because of their beliefs or what they want. But these flags are really becoming a menace to society. If people want to fly them at your own home. That's fine. Fly them in your business. That's fine. But you don't get to see what's going on in the school systems. We parents have to live with our kids coming home and telling us the horror stories of them being slapped in the face, having tennis balls thrown at their face constantly because they have a different preference of sexuality, because they believe in God and the Bible, because they believe in the family unity. Leave the flagpoles to the city and the state. We don't need everybody fighting over what flag's going to be on that pole to represent them. They can represent themselves. I'm all for unity, but we've got to start bringing people back together, and our children are suffering in school because of flags. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Aaron Packard, Ward 4, Fitchburg. Being a United States Army veteran, I took an oath that I've never, ever forgotten, and that is to defend the Constitution of the United States. And it's a proud moment when I stand and salute the U.S. flag. There's your unity, the U.S. flag. There is unity in the Massachusetts flag, coinciding with the pride that everybody keeps pushing forth. Not to forget, 2004, Massachusetts was the first state to honor same-sex marriage. So you're pushing a moot point. In regards to who gets to pick and choose the flags, it should be public. Hey, I petition. I want to raise this flag for this special occasion, and do it appropriately through all the cycles that we put forth. Nobody gets to pick or choose because of their personal or political agenda. It's plain and simple. And with that, I do support the mayor's executive order on the 3 flags that stand on those public poles. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Babenzi. I'm Fitchburg, Mass. I am the president of Nuoco Pride. We are the organization that raises the pride flag in that park every year because that is where we hold our Gay Pride Festival. We chose Fitchburg because it's centrally located for our major area that we represent, which is all of North Worcester County, Massachusetts. You guys were the first city to allow us to raise the pride flag in our area, and then followed suit with Leominster, Lunenburg, and now we have 5 more towns willing to raise a pride flag because their citizens want to be seen and heard. Not raising the flag makes it that you are condemning people who live in this town and city because you cannot separate other people's beliefs, which are religious, and I remind you, there is a separation of church and state for a reason. The churches do not dictate what a government does, nor does it dictate anything about how I live my life in my private bedroom. So I stand here proudly saying that I will support the city council's ordinance to override the mayor. Our problem is not with who flies a flag. Anyone is welcome to fly a flag. It is their right with the approval of the city or government. But to sit there and ban it all because one group feels affected who has never been treated with hate, violence, killed or murdered just because of who they love. I will stand up here every day and make it my mission that this town will be painted with gay flags up and down Main Street every year if it does not fly on that flagpole. Thank you.
Further public comment on this issue?
Zoe Seth Ayer. I was not prepared to talk. The only thing I would like to say is that my brother is gay, and I was the only one knew that he was gay from early on, and this was the hardest thing for me to do, to keep it secret from my family. This is my family story, and I know that there are countries. My brother was not raised here, so where he was raised, being a gay was still a taboo, and that's why he kept it to himself. So I understand gay people, where they're coming from, but I feel that them having the need to have a different flag than everybody else, it just separates us. I think we only need one flag to unite us. We don't need a rainbow flag. We are all people. We're all one race. We should be united, and we don't need his flag, her flag, their flag. There's only one flag. Every country has its flag, and I personally, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak to you. I appreciate it. My name is Patrick Hayes. I'm a resident here in Fitchburg. I'm also a founding member of NoOco Pride in 2019. I'm no longer a member on the board, but I would like to voice my opinion respectfully. I respect everyone's opinion in here. They all strong points, and that's wonderful. If it seems to me that the issue at hand is the one flag we're talking, the one pole we're talking about here, which is they're all pointing to the American flag. I respect that. I think we can come to an agreement here. There has to be some way we can work something out where we can satisfy all parties. Perhaps another pole could be erected of some sort so to satisfy whatever's going on. Everyone should be entitled to come before and say, can I have my flag raised, for example, with my own community, the LGBTQ plus community during a Pride. Any other town, Worcester, Boston, Providence, they do this. So I think we should show some respect for our different communities and allow it to happen. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I make a correction?
No. This public comment isn't a debate. Is there anyone further who has not yet spoken? All right, the matter is before the committee, and I would invite Councillor Van Hazinga to, as the principal sponsor, to present the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first off, I want to start off by explaining that this ordinance does not decide what flags can or can't be flown. It makes no decision regards that. What this ordinance does is establish a policy in which the City Council can determine which flags can be flown or not flown, and make it an open process where we can receive public comment, where people can argue the facts and make points and arguments. Because right now, we have no discussion about that. Right now, the mayor decides unilaterally. The mayor's released a policy in January basically limiting flags, commemorative or ceremonial flags, with a few exceptions. But there's no discussion about it. There's no open process where people can comment on what should or should not be allowed. And the mayor could come tomorrow and release a new policy and change it, and there's no discussion about that. So what this ordinance does is it creates a process where we can talk about it, where we can have a forum where people can voice their concerns about a particular flag or advocate for a particular flag. And right now, we don't have that. As we look at what our city's policy should be, we have to consider the recent Supreme Court case of Shirtless versus the City of Boston, which dealt with the City of Boston's flag policy in that they allowed people to fly flags at the City Hall. There were 3 flagpoles, and they would replace the city flag with flags of various groups, people who had asked to do so. And as a result of that, the communities basically have, to simplify things, 3 options when it comes to public flagpoles. That they can be used for public speech. They can be an open forum that anyone can come and fly a flag as their form of speech. The problem is that the city can't restrict that. It's open. It's open to everybody, and you can't say no. And that's the problem the City of Boston had, because for 284 petitioners, they didn't say no until the 285th one. And the problem is that sometimes you can get some really ugly flags that shouldn't be flown. Nobody wants to see a swastika flying over Riverfront Park. But under this type of policy, you can't say no. The second option is to limit the flagpoles for use as government speech. That you have to have a process by which the city decides which flags can fly as a way to express official sentiments of the city, to be the speech of the government. But with this process, you need to have a clear and orderly process that ensures that it's actually the government speech, not just public speech. Because that's the problem the City of Boston had, is that they said it was a method of government speech, but in practice, it wasn't. It was a public forum. They didn't say no for 284 flags. The city officials didn't participate. And that's why they lost the case, ultimately, in the Supreme Court. So you have to have a clear and orderly policy, and you have to be willing to say no if the sentiments of a flag that's proposed don't align with the ideals and sentiments that the city wants to express. The third option is that you don't allow any public flags. You just limit it to a set number of flags, and that's it. And you don't let the public petition for specific flags or ceremonies or anything. You just say no speech, and that's it. And the city didn't have a defined policy for flags. It appears handled on a case-by-case sort of ad hoc basis. That put us at odds with the Shirtlift decision and exposed us that we could get in trouble for saying no to anybody who wanted to fly a flag or to not be able to say no. So the mayor did announce an official flag policy, which the city does need. But the problem is that it adopts, for the most part, the third option, that it doesn't allow public speech. Under the mayor's current policy, the city is not allowed to fly ceremonial flags on flagpoles with a very limited number of exceptions, which include the flags of other countries recognized by the U.S., recognized sister cities of Fitchburg, and professional and scholastic sports teams that have a regional connection. So some of the flags that I've mentioned here tonight are not allowed to be flown on city flagpoles. The Rotary flag cannot be flown on the city flagpoles under the mayor's policy. But under this ordinance, you could talk to a city councilor or the mayor. A resolution could be put forward. We could talk about it, the Rotary's contributions to having that flagpole, and we could have a resolution where we do fly that flag. Maybe it's all the time. Maybe it's in honor of a small business week or some occasion like that, part of a public ceremony to draw attention to public business. The POW flag was mentioned. That cannot be flown under the mayor's policy on city flagpoles, nor can any flags for veterans groups. If the city wanted to hold a ceremony at Riverfront Park honoring veterans on June 6th, we would not be able to fly any veterans or military flags. Those are not allowed under the current policy. If we wanted to show support for other communities in times of crisis, of natural disasters or terrorist attacks, we would not be able to do that. If after the Boston Marathon bombings we wanted to fly a flag for the marathon or for the city of Boston as a show of solidarity and support, we would not be able to do that under the mayor's current ordinance. If we wanted to show support for the Fitchburg or the New York Fire Department or the city of New York after the 9/11 attacks, we would not be able to do that under this ordinance. There are a million different possible flags that may be very reasonable and supported to fly, and it's impossible to decide ahead of time what those should be. You just can't do it. There will always be something that comes up. So the city needs the flexibility to have a process where people can come forward and say, this is something we should do. And if it's sponsored by a city councilor or the mayor who agrees and is willing to support it as the government speech, that we should do this, we should have that opportunity to do it. Because the ability of the city to use public ceremonies, including raising a flag, to signify support or honor groups is a good thing. The city has a powerful voice, and we should use it to express our ideals and sentiments in support of our residents. It doesn't benefit the city to give up this voice. The city should use it for good. So what this ordinance does is establish a process for determining what this should be, and it's an open process. It's not done by one person. It's done by an elected council who takes input from the public. Currently, there is no input from the public. It is decided by one person. It's a better process if it's open. It's a better process if we have the ability to get input from members of the community, because many people feel very strongly about this issue. And we should hear that, and the city should hear that when we decide what we should stand up and say with our flagpoles. But right now, we don't have that. So under this ordinance, any proposed resolution would be evaluated in an open meeting. We would discuss it, the flag's intent, the message, and the context of the flag. We would take public comment. And this is how we ensure the city's making the right decision. Doing something in secret unilaterally, sometimes it has a good result, often it doesn't. But you have better chances of having the better result by having it open, by having discussion. Because this discussion is good. I may not agree with some of the things that people said in front of us tonight. I may have different views in regards to different flags, but that's okay. We're adults. We can have a discussion about it. We can be civil to each other, and we can come to an agreement about what is the best thing for our city. So the easiest path is to have a blanket ban. That's the least controversial. That's the easiest. There's just say, okay, no flags. We'll fly the United States flag, Commonwealth of Massachusetts flag, and the City of Fitchburg flag. That's the easiest thing to do. But that doesn't make it the right thing to do. Sometimes we have to take the harder path. Sometimes we have to be willing to have a discussion about what is right or wrong. And we get to a better result that way. You know, and we have a long tradition in our city of flying flags and holding ceremonies in support of different groups or individuals to honor people, to express support for people who are marginalized, or to celebrate the diversity and heritage of our city. Those are good things. And that's something we lose if we just say, no, we're not going to do that. And we shouldn't be afraid to have those discussions. They're worthwhile. And I think it makes our city better. So I think there's some misunderstanding about the intent and what this ordinance does. I hope I helped explain it. If any councilors have questions about any particulars in the ordinance, I'm happy to talk about it and answer it the best I can. But I appreciate everybody's time in coming out to express their views and talk to us, and I appreciate the councilors and the committee to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to committee members, I forgot before I asked you to introduce this, I do have one additional public comment that was communicated to me by email and is on file with the city clerk's office. This is, Dear President Zarella, I am deeply sorry that I cannot attend in person tonight to speak about my strong support of Ordinance 036-23 regarding commemorative flags. Therefore, I ask that my remarks be submitted as part of the official testimony of tonight's meeting. Dear Chairman Zarella, my name is Patrick Hare, and as I'm sure you'll recall, I served as Mayor DiNatale's Chief of Staff from 2020 through 2021. It was with a sense of pride that served the people of Fitchburg and a sense of pride I witnessed in the citizens of Fitchburg. I was fortunate enough to be a part of multiple flag-raising ceremonies throughout the city, and it was that sense of pride that I saw beamed on everyone's face when a flag that meant so much to them and their community would be proudly flown over their city, a city that they took pride in and ownership of, whether it was raising the raising of the Donate Life flag on Valentine's Day, the Haitian flag in honor of Haitian Flag Day, the Pride flag for Pride Week, or the city flag to celebrate the opening of these two symbolic buildings. I believe he means the Legislative Building and City Hall. Our city and its officials have jumped at the occasion to fly flags and share photos of prideful faces for all to see. Flags are emblems, symbolic of what we believe in, stand and kneel for. They are a testament for what we've fought for what many have died for. Taking away the right of citizens to stand in support with their communities, their city, and their elected officials is a cowardly answer to the Shurtleff v. Boston case. Any elected official can choose which events to attend and support. Every politician in this room knows how to make sure their opposition or support is known. Many of you have shown up for certain flag-raising ceremonies and not others. That was, is, and should continue to be your choice. I believe that the January flag policy was created in direct outcry from the public when the city flew the nuclear family flag. I don't recall a single commenter saying that this flag should not be given the right to fly. That group had just as much of a right to petition their flag be flown as any other. Banning public flag-raising ceremonies is not the answer to hate. Research and sharing of information on the ceremonies you choose to attend and celebrate is needed. Many of you are already doing this, sharing when you attend and why it was important for that community to celebrate in such a way, or not showing up, not holding on to a symbol of hate in a photo op, or not recognizing its symbolism. The people of Fitchburg came out strongly to say that they take pride in the flags that are flown. We can and should continue to do that while publicly fighting hatred and bigotry. I am in support of Ordinance 03623 and thank Councillors Squalia, Van Hazinga, and Cruz for their submissions. Patrick Hare, 12 Connors Street, Fitchburg, Mass. And I appreciate that comment as well. Before we begin, we're not taking further comment from the public at this time. That was one that I forgot to read in at the close of public comment, but public comment is now closed. Ma'am, public comment is now closed.
By you guys.
No. Public comment is closed.
It should be the other way, because we talk and then you talk and then we cannot say anything.
That's exactly the way it is. That's true.
Yes, there should be a dialogue.
It's not the way it is right now. Public comment is closed. Now, before we begin to discuss this as a committee, I do want to just note that, as Councillor Van Hazinga said, I've read through this ordinance. This ordinance is not about deciding tonight or at the next council meeting which flags should be flown. It's about setting a process. And we do absolutely need some process, unless we do simply go for a blanket ban on all non-governmental flags. Because if we say, you can ask for your flag to be flown, you can ask for your flag to be flown, you can ask for your flag to be flown, eventually, ma'am, public comment is closed. Now, eventually, if you have a policy that does not allow us to say no to anyone, which is exactly what the Shurtleff case said happens if you just say to everyone who wants to fly a flag, come on and fly your flag, eventually someone will come to us and say, it's Veterans of the Confederacy Day, or it's, whatever else, and someone's going to want to fly a flag that this city should not be associated with. It's not about, this ordinance is occasioned by a dispute over a gay pride flag, nuclear family flag, but it's not about that. It's about having a mechanism to make sure that flags that everyone in this room could agree should not be flying on a city flagpole don't end up getting flown on a city flagpole because we have a legal obligation to do so. Accordingly, one of our commenters, Ms. Wetchy, said constituents choose their representatives, and that is true. That's a benefit, I feel, of this ordinance, is we have the discussion publicly. Our votes as to which flags we support as the official sentiments of the Fitchburg City government and which ones we oppose are on record, and we stand for re-election every 2 years. If we support a flag that someone objects to, they can vote against us. If we oppose a flag that someone supports, they can vote against us. It makes it clear. And just as examples of some flags recently that we have flown that are not just the government flags, but that I think at the time were important to express. When Ukraine was invaded by Russia, we flew a Ukrainian flag on the city flagpole. We might have, like Councillor Van Hazinga said, flags for veterans. We might have, I believe that in the Police Memorial Park, I think, if I recall correctly, when we have the memorial service, we have a police flag flying. That's still a city flagpole, though. If we say no flags on city flagpoles except the country, the state, and the city, we can't fly that. And it really is about deciding whether our flagpoles are going to be a free-for-all public forum, which, again, could include expression that I don't think anyone here wants to see on a city flagpole, or if it is going to be a vehicle for the official speech of the government, which has been affirmed and reaffirmed time and again as distinct from the speech of the public and not required to be perfectly neutral on all issues. It allows us to say, yes, we're going to fly a POW flag. No, we're not going to fly a Confederate veterans flag. Yes, we're going to fly a Ukrainian flag. No, you can't put up a Russian flag in response. It allows us to say that, and again, the position the government takes on these things may not be the position everyone agrees with. That's what we have elections for. If you don't like what your government is thinking, you need new people to have those thoughts. And I would invite anyone who finds my opinions on anything objectionable, just don't check my name off on the ballot this fall. That's your solution. But we can't just not take a position. We need to have the option to take a stand for what's right and against what's wrong, regardless of what each individual one of us may think falls into either of those two categories. That being said, I believe I had Councillor Kuchar next.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I think this is a constitutional quagmire that we're going to be getting ourselves into. And personally, I wouldn't want to see the city of Fitchburg named in a lawsuit saying that we're violating, the Constitution. I would truly like to hear from Solicitor Pusateri on his research on this, because I have some concerns in regards to many different aspects of this, namely separation of powers, where the mayor decides one thing and then, somebody from the legislative process tries to overrule him. And, now you have the legislature telling the executive branch what to do. I think that's a huge issue. Also, you have the constitutional question here. Me being delving into the Constitution as I do in my practice, I would really like to hear from Solicitor Pusateri.
Solicitor, if you'd like to comment.
Sure. First of all, there's been the first thing that happened is we put a policy out there because there was no policy. And we've been continuing to receive comment, the mayor has been receiving comment and about inclusion of other messages. And I think I even learned of a new one tonight, the Rotary, and not knowing that the Rotary donated money to put the flagpole certainly was an oversight on my part. So we're continuing to receive comments, and Chris, we received some comment from our police chief about veterans flags. We're certainly mindful of that. And we're certainly going to continue to listen to what everyone is saying. The separation of powers is something that Councilor Kuchar and I had talked about briefly, and in essence, it appears to me that the ordinance does a couple of things. One, and Councilor Zarella and I have been discussing this as well. The ordinance proposes to restrict the class of people who can petition City Council to raise a flag to solely City Councilors and to the Mayor. And my suggestion is that the initiative petition is still a viable vehicle for anybody in the community who wants to petition directly, whether it be to amend the ordinance or whether it be to seek any measure, is what our charter says for City Council. So I'm questioning the ability of us to limit that class of people that can request a flag. And if the, absent some additional diligence on our parts collectively, absent some other case citation, I think I would be ruling that 3 signatures on an initiative petition seeking that a resolution be made to raise a particular flag would need to be entertained by council. The separation of powers is somewhat of an uncompleted thought that I've been working on. There's been some other things, including we're trying to get a life flight helicopter situated in the airport, and a couple other things have been keeping me from the flag policy. The interesting thing is, picture a hypothetical, if we will. Unanimously, City Council has voted to fly the XYZ flag, but the mayor is vehemently opposed to the XYZ flag. He only wants to fly the ABC flag. And 11 votes on a resolution is provided, and the mayor doesn't want to act. What do? Can this body tell the mayor what he has to do? Because the mayor is the department, he oversees the department heads. They're in charge of operating, if you will, the mechanisms of the flagpoles, or whatever the mechanism might be. So that creates a situation in my mind where I don't know the result of that. I don't know how that issue would ultimately be resolved, but I do see that being an invasion into the executive function. So those are the 2 primary issues. When we talk about freedom of speech for all of us to say what we want to say, it's important for us when we talk about this issue to keep 2 things separate in our minds. And I always say this, on the left-hand side, I think about a public forum, a place where anybody can say anything. And then on the right-hand side, I think about what the Shurtleff case talks about, which is government speech, which is that government can select a message. Government can endorse a message. And while that may be, there's no case out there that says that government has a First Amendment constitutional right to free speech that I'm aware of. And I think that we even saw that in some dictum in that Shurtleff case. Mm-hmm. The question is whether or not, I think the ordinance presents the question is what should we do? Should we be involved in the business of picking and choosing winners and losers and messages, or should we allow the people, like, for example, I think we're going to have the event down at Riverfront Park. I think a group of people can always petition and be permitted to use one of our parks, and they can do what they want with our parks while they are, in a respectful manner, and operate their event. So with all of that being said, the 2 issues that I've kind of hung up on, separation of powers that my brother touched upon here, and then the ability to restrict the class of applicants to just city councilors and mayors. So that's my...
Councilor Van Hasinga?
Sure, just to respond to a couple of those points. So the decision to restrict the petitioners to city councilors and the mayor is an effort to ensure compliance with the Shurtleff decision. That in order to have a controlled flag policy that expresses government speech, The idea is that the sentiments come from members of the government. And the city of public, I receive feedback from the public all the time on various things about various petitions that I then sponsor. But the idea that that decision in that speech is coming from a member of the government ensures that it is expressing the sentiments of the government, not as a public forum. So that's a sort of a safety valve there to ensure compliance with the chairlift decision. In terms of separation of powers, there are checks and balances within our system of government all over the place. If this mayor wants to buy a new dump truck or put in a gold toilet in the executive washroom in the city hall, he has to get city council approval, and we can say no. There are plentiful examples of back and forth. If he wants to appoint a new director of the health department, we get to say yes or no. There are checks and balances. And those checks and balances are defined by the city's bylaws. And the city council has the right to adjust the bylaws as we see fit, basically. So this is part of the normal government process, and I don't think it's a conflict. And I will point to the current policy that there are exceptions in here. So it's already decided that some flags are okay and some are not, beyond the 3 basic governmental flags. But there's no open process to decide what those should be. And what this ordinance does is provide an open public process where we can decide that and talk about it and debate it. Right now there's not, because right now there are exceptions to this rule. So you're talking about concern about which flags are allowed and which aren't. This policy already does that in a much more limited sense, but it does. And there's no open process. It's a unilateral decision by the mayor that can be changed at any time. That tomorrow the mayor could release a new policy that allows different flags or doesn't allow flags here. There's no open public process to determine what that should be.
Sure. I think it's definitely, thank you for explaining the genesis of why we would limit the class. It's the charter that all of our ordinance have to be in compliance with the charter. And I use that term with, I think, air quotes from now on after our research. And it's Section 37, and I'm happy to have Councilor Zarella correct me on this because we do enjoy debating the legal concepts offline.
I believe you're correct.
So I just don't think that that we can pass an ordinance that says, you know, that provision that's in our charter that says any 3 citizens can come in and petition the city council for it uses the term measure, and then it defines measure to include resolution. Except for flags. We can, that now means except for flags. That would really require us to go back and kind of take that governing document and change that. So that's my primary point there. The separation of powers, I appreciate the checks and balance concept, but this is where we're now saying is that the executive will now be forced to express a message. And I know that there's no First Amendment protection for government necessarily. So I think that's going to put us in a brand new area where I don't have a lot of clarity as to what would be the result of a problem like that. I mean, people would be up in the streets wanting the XYZ flag versus the ABC flag or not. I don't know, but you know, it's just a hypothetical, and maybe we shouldn't what if it because we can cross that bridge when we get to it. It could be a fair rebuttal to that, but I just don't know the answer to that, and I would be leaning towards. I don't think that this body can say to the executive, "Hey, you are now forced to endorse our message." So that's the other issue that I would have there. That's fine.
Oh, go ahead.
So nothing in this ordinance requires the mayor to participate in a flag raising. That if the mayor, as the executive, does not want to endorse the message, they do not have to
participate in the actual raising of the flag.
That is correct. But the city facilities are governed by the rules of our bylaws and ultimately the city council. So this is a forum where public decisions are made regularly.
Yeah.
We have many resolutions that go through the city council because we are the vehicle by which these resolutions come forward and are approved. And those resolutions may not necessarily be the sentiments of the mayor as the executive of the city, but the city council has the right to put them forward, to vote on them, to approve them, or to shoot them down.
So on that topic, this is actually something that Solicitor Pusateri and I have discussed at length. I think, personally, I think Councilor Van Hazinga is correct insofar as the flagpoles are not simply messaging, they are city property, and the council certainly has the authority to make rules governing the use of city property. Further, there is already a provision in the charter that subjects all measures passed by the city council, including resolutions, to the veto process and to the veto override, which means the council could pass a resolution, just a general resolution, not to do anything, but to express a sentiment saying, be it resolved that the city of Fitchburg supports XYZ. The mayor could veto it, but with sufficient votes, the council could override his veto, and that resolution then would become operative. It would be the official expression of the sentiments of the city of Fitchburg. That being said, I think that the simplest solution, if there were a constitutional or charter separation of powers issue regarding directing the mayor to fly a flag that he does not wish to fly, the sort of narrowest solution to that would simply be to say that the resolution shall not apply over the objection of the mayor. That the mayor can't fly anything without the approval of the council. The council also can't fly anything without the approval of the mayor. Because generally speaking, in one sense, the legislature telling the executive what to do is exactly the ordinary course of affairs. The executive's role is to execute the laws as passed by the legislature. Where it gets dicey is rules of general application versus specific day-to-day decisions. And I would also agree that if the council attempted to pass something that instructed the mayor to take a specific individual action on a certain day and time, or to, do or not do some specific individual act as mayor, that would be an infringement on the executive role. This kind of straddles that gap. On the one hand, it sets a general rule. It says, this is the process for deciding what sentiments shall be expressed by the city of Fitchburg by the use of the city property, to wit, flagpoles. On the other hand, it does involve specific decisions, not just general rules. But by analogy to the resolution process, the general resolution process, I don't see a problem with that, particularly as the only decision that the mayor would have to be involved in is essentially to not instruct his department heads to ignore this ordinance and refuse to prepare the flagpole for the flying of the flag. It's the only act that would be required of the executive department is essentially purely ministerial. Make sure the flag is ready on such and such a date to receive this flag. He would be free to show up on that day and endorse it. He would be free to stay away. He would even be free to show up on that day and say publicly, I strongly oppose the raising of this flag. Nothing would restrict that. But the mayor, and this is not specific to this mayor, this is any mayor, the mayor is not the government. The mayor is one branch of the government. So when it comes to the speech of the government, the mayor alone is not assigned the sole power to determine that. And I would raise another analogy as well. If we decided to pass as a council an ordinance stating that we are going to print up and distribute pamphlets on a certain subject through the health department or something, let's say cancer awareness pamphlets or something. If we passed it by a sufficient vote to override a veto, it wouldn't matter if the mayor didn't want the city to take that particular position on cancer for whatever reason. It would get printed and it would get distributed because that would be the ordinance. I see this as no different. Lastly, and I'll get back to you in a second, Mr. Solicitor. As to the initiative question, I would agree that's a bit dicey. I think that as long as we are clear in the ordinance and in any resolution pursuant to the ordinance that we are expressing a government sentiment at the request of the constituency, not allowing the constituency to express their sentiments, I think we could still dodge the shirtlift issue because we'd still be making an individualized determination as to whether each given message is or is not the official position of the city. That's what my reading of the case would seem to indicate. But, yeah, I think that this is, it's not that there aren't questions presented that don't have a clear precedential answer. I don't think there's any clear precedent on this really anywhere in the country because shirtlift is new. Up until recently, it was kind of assumed that cities could get away with just flying what they want to fly and not flying what they don't want to fly and whatever. But that's no longer the state of the law. But I think that those questions are susceptible of relatively clear answers. And you had further comment, Mr. Solicitor?
And thank you, and I appreciate the kind debate that we're having about this. The act of flying the flag, I don't think anyone would actually consider it simply ministerial, because what it is the expression of, it's a speech. So I
the
think,
act required of the mayor would be ministerial in that he would only have to make the pole available, and someone else could actually attach and raise the flag.
And then it's the general expression of the message. So we're saying the government is saying this,
not
but
the
we're
mayor.
but we're not saying, no, the city council's saying this. So one of the thoughts we had was, well, this is the city council's room, right? I mean, and I had spoken with you about it. But I don't think, like, for example, can the mayor then say, well, we really don't want you to put up signs in your council room. I mean, this would kind of be your chambers to do with it as you please. But the expression of the quote-unquote the government message would have to have some, I think, unison between, because it's not a ministerial act to speak, right? If it's the government speaking. It's not, we've override the mayor's decision as to what the government speech should be because we have the vote. And I don't know the answers to this because, again, it's unclear. Although I wasn't fully aware until Councilor Van Huysen explained it to me that the sentiment of excluding or closing the class of applicants was for compliance with the Supreme Court's case. The fact that the initiative petition would open that up, and I'm sure we can certainly continue to debate that, and I'm willing to be wrong in a final analysis. But at this point, I'm seeing it as they can certainly do that. Would that erode our ability to say, hey, we're in compliance with the new case? That's a tough one. So I'd have to think about that a little bit.
In the same sense that we had in my first year in office, a petition came forward asking us to adopt a resolution. The topic is not actually important here and will just occasion further debate, but it was a resolution on a politically controversial issue, and we voted not to express that sentiment. We could just as easily have voted to express it or to express the opposite sentiment. And even though it was brought to us by a constituent, that didn't make it the constituent's speech. So I do think that's a soluble issue.
The final point is, we don't have enough case law that I can see that's going to explain the mayor expressing a sentiment, the council expressing a sentiment, council's ability to tell the mayor, no, this is the sentiment you're going to be expressing, and certainly seems to be any way of support for the mayor to tell the council this is the sentiment that you're going to be expressing. And the only case I kept, and I think we've talked about this case before, the dueling, I think it was the Fitchburg City Council versus former Mayor dueling, 1930 something, and it was the city council trying to force the mayor to sign a contract, I believe for the construction of a school or something, and they were talking about a little bit of the ministerial or what is a true executive function and so on and so forth. And in that case, the court did decide that the council did not have the ability to reach over to the mayor and say, this is the direction that we want the entire city we want the city to move in. I don't know if there was I would assume, and I don't have the facts of the case off the top of my head, that there was an override of a veto or at least the numbers were there. So I think that's what I'm thinking of, okay? And I'm just going to leave it at that because I'm just here. I'm really trying to stay in my position as a legal advisor and not a policy advisor.
So one question that I would like the committee members and the solicitor before our next discussion, which I'm sure will happen before the council votes on this, one question I'd like to consider is, what if the council were to put forth an ordinance on a councilor's initiative and say, there shall be posted in all public areas of City Hall a sign advising constituents of such and such legal right or something like that. And the mayor says, I don't want to post that. It seems to me that that would be a perfectly ordinary exercise of legislative power to say such and such sign shall be on the wall at all entrances or something like that. We see ordinances and statutes like that literally all the time. So that's where I'm leaning. I don't see a contract as really being analogous because a contract is exercising the power of the mayor to assent to that contract, just as the president signing a treaty or something like that. But at any rate,
no, just going off that point. I mean, it's analogous. I mean, we're both lawyers. What do you have? What's a contract? Offer, acceptance, consideration. Correct. Okay. So the mayor asking to have this flag raised. Well, that's an offer. He accepts. The consideration is the flag actually going up. So you do have a contract. So I can actually see where it is analogous. So I just think honestly that this should be held to do more research, get more information, research more case law, and take a look to see what else we can come up with. I don't think it's ready to go to full council yet.
If that's what the committee thinks. Personally, I think we're not going to find anything by researching case law because someone's got to take the first step. Because, like I said, Shurtleff is new.
Right.
No one's actually had to do this.
But I think the separation of powers issue is something that we really need to delve into. And as I said, I really don't want to see the city in some sort of a Supreme Court, being a defendant in a Supreme Court case. So, that's a very big concern that I have. So I say we should tread lightly on this and hold it until more research can be done.
Fair enough. Councilor Cruz?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. And I commend the council so far on a good debate, and I commend Councilor Van Hasing for putting this forward, because I think so much of this is about just that, is about good debate to have in a quorum with conduct, a decorum with policies, that we can have a healthy discussion about this stuff. That's what's so important about. That's what we're here to do. It's what we're elected to do. I do want to backtrack and just say that this is not about one flag versus another. This is about putting a clear and transparent procedure in place to allow groups and organizations to potentially raise their flag, whoever that group may be. And I think that's important. And I think throwing my impetus to jump on board this petition was because I do think it's the wrong choice for the mayor to just throw a blanket. We're not going to raise any flag except for these three for the exact reason you saw tonight. You've got Rotary Club, you've got veterans. I mean, you've got Boy Scouts of America, Girl Scouts. We should be able to have discussions about what flag we'd like to fly and what flag we wouldn't. And as far as the separation of power, I mean, that's the whole point of this body. We're a check and balance to the executive branch. That's what we're here to do. And I think that, I don't think anything about the petition is discriminatory. I think it's quite the opposite. I think it allows for discussion, and it allows for people like yourself to come before this body and explain and talk. And I think perhaps if we had had something like this beforehand, the situation might not have escalated to where it did. So I don't think we need to wait. And to piggyback on one more thing, because I think Councillor Van Hazinga really put it very well tonight. But to talk about we don't want something before, the Fitchburg, before the Supreme Court. Well, if somebody's rights in this city are discriminated against, or if they've been unjustly wronged, well, I'm comfortable with that. We're here to fight for the citizens that we represent. And is it tough? Is it sticky? Yeah, of course. But I mean, you've got to do what you believe is the right thing to do. That's why we were elected. That's what I think I'm doing here tonight. And the right thing is to support this petition. I yield the floor. Thank you.
I would like under Rule 4.9 of our council rules, I would like to request unanimous consent from my fellow committee members to allow me as chair to put forth a motion on my own initiative without leaving the chair. Thank you. So my motion is for an amendment to take the separation of powers issue out of it, essentially, in the interim, at least. We could add it back in if we get good research and get a result that is favorable to the original form of the ordinance. But I would simply suggest that we amend the ordinance. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me anymore. Do you have a copy? I just want to get the language. Oh, excellent. Thank you both. I would simply suggest that we add some language, and I don't have an exact language off the top of my head, to the first sentence or following the first sentence that simply indicates that the assent of the mayor is indispensable to a favorable resolution. That way, again, if there's a question about whether we can command the mayor to fly a flag that he doesn't want to fly, well, we'll just set that to one side for now. We'll assume that the answer is no, temporarily at least, until we're sure the answer is yes. But I don't think that's going to come up very often, honestly, where there's a supermajority of the council wishing to fly a flag and the mayor wanting to say no. I think it's far more likely, not specific to this mayor, but for any mayor, it's far more likely that it would be the other way around, that the mayor, being one person, has a flag he would like to fly and the council doesn't think it should fly. And I think, contrary to the inverse situation, that's a scenario where I don't think there's really any separation of powers issue. The ability of the council to say such and such expression, such and such sentiment shall not be expressed by use of the city's property seems to be an elementary legislative power. As long as, again, it's in the realm solely of government speech and not a public forum of any sort. So I would make a motion that we amend the proposed ordinance to add language to the first paragraph indicating that a council resolution in support of a given flag shall only be effective with the assent of the mayor. Do I have a second? I have a second. On the motion, Councillor Van Hazinga?
I disagree, because this places ultimate power over the sentiments and speech of the government with one person, and that's not how it should be. This places ultimate control in one person, and one person does not determine the sentiments of the government. We are a much larger elected body. We have a process by which we can have public debate and public comment. There is no such process or comment in regards to a unilateral decision by the mayor. I think it's the wrong way to handle this, and I think it defeats the purpose of reaching consensus as to what the government speech should be.
Thank you. And in principle, I agree. I am in favor of the original wording of the ordinance. I'm simply thinking if amending it to provide sort of, I guess you could call it a two-way veto, if that's what's necessary to get it passed at all in the first instance, then maybe we can do that. And then if we need to delete that language later, once we've satisfied ourselves that we do have the power to override the mayor on that issue, then...
Well, our bylaws already have a process by which the mayor can veto, essentially, a decision of the council. And it raises a higher standard to which the council must reach consensus before it can be passed. And I think that's the appropriate method. That there should not, it's any one councillor cannot control what flags are allowed to fly, aren't allowed to fly. No one person should be in control of that. Because there may be situations where the mayor disagrees with what people think vehemently should and should not fly. But it should be an open forum where we reach consensus. And if the mayor feels strongly, they have the opportunity to essentially veto and require a supermajority. And that's the right way to do it. Because there are lots of aspects of our city code which are decided by the city council. And the city council can change the rules. We are allowed to do that. It has happened in recent memory in terms of which departmental positions require council approval. That has been changed with disagreements between the mayor and the council. That the mayor does carry out the executive branch, but the council is the form which sets the rules. And that's what this process is doing, is setting the rules. And the council is the legislative body where things can be discussed and debated. We can take public comment. And that's the forum which should be used to determine what the public sentiments of the government are. And I think it places undue power in the hands of the mayor to have ultimate control over what that speech should be.
All right. Did I see Councillor Cragen with a hand up?
No, I was, you did. It really had more to do with, being in agreement with you. So my position on this, looking at it, it's occasioned lively debate in the Cragen-Warner household. And one of the things that we came up with, that my husband thought, and I agree, is that ensuring there are provisions for flags of the future. So currently there is not a First Nations flag. There are individual tribal flags that are flown in different places in the West, but there is none that unifies, the people of the First Nations. So that was one example. Another was Juneteenth. Now, Juneteenth is a federal holiday. There is a flag that is commemorative of Juneteenth. That is a flag we thought, should be included in the list as well. So my thoughts are more towards working on the executive order in place, because I feel like, what I've observed is that right now spirits and tempers are really high, and I've been in pretty regular contact with City Solicitor Pusateri. And I'm sorry I haven't had the time to reach out to all of you guys individually, but we've read this. And I'm not leaning towards, especially where the city of Boston doesn't know what they're doing yet, because they actually got a request from for Satanic Appreciation Week, which is July 23rd to the 29th. They are holding off making a decision. They have suspended their flag program. That's breaking news. That has not changed. So we're in kind of a canary coal mine situation. We have an executive order that so far is working. I don't have any hesitation to make an appointment with the mayor and have all kinds of discussions with flags. And I've had family members that are concerned that we fly the flag of Armenia during Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, which is April 24th. Well, how do you commemorate that? You fly the flag of Armenia, which is recognized by the United States government, and we have diplomatic relationships with them, and that's all within, that's all already covered. Maybe someday there will be an Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day flag that includes the Forget-Me-Not, that may include some of the elements of the flag, but, I don't know. I don't think any of us know that stuff. So that's my piece on this, and I would have given you a second.
All
and
right.
I yield the floor.
Thank you. And any further comment on the motion to amend? All right, that said, all in favor? Aye. In opposition? 3 in favor, 2 in opposition. Motion to amend passes. On the main ordinance, any further comments or motions?
A motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second to recommend adoption of the ordinance. Speaking on the motion.
I'll speak on the motion just because I want to be sure that I'm clear as to what's happening here. So we are going to, would this not be a leave to withdraw because we're going to be adding language? I mean, I think what we really need to do is a leave to withdraw, to review it, to add that language to it. So we are looking at something that's not marked up.
Or as I said, a motion to hold.
Which could be the motion as well. It's not the motion we have before us at the moment. But I will say that in past practice in this committee, we have been very comfortable with making recommendations for amendments and then a recommendation to pass as amended. And if the council adopts the report of the committee, then both the amendments and the final passage are considered adopted. That's how we handled, for instance, the zoning ordinances. We made a bunch of amendments in committee, and the council itself did not vote individually on each of those amendments or recommit to legislative affairs after seeing a edited version. Certainly, obviously, everyone's vote is their own. So if you're not comfortable recommending it to the council, then you'd be enabled. But that is something that we have done on frequent occasion in this committee and as a council.
Thank you for that. Just still speaking on the motion. I would. It doesn't seem ready yet. Right now, it's soon. The conversations are indicating to me that we have something that is working. I've certainly been around in the world of school committee. Contracts hold until they are redone, and we have something that's holding right now. And if there are requests for particular flags, we have a system and we have a program. And who's to say we couldn't get back together in 2 or 3 weeks? Because this is front burner stuff. So my inclination is, either to abstain or to vote nay, and I haven't decided yet.
Well, there is no abstention.
On this one, okay.
But just in the council in general, there is no abstention. But so on that subject and on the motion, I'll just note that I certainly understand the sentiment. I think that, again, the issue isn't so much that the current ordinance is, rather that the current policy, because there is no current ordinance, that was stated during public comment, but there is no ordinance, it's just the mayor's order. It's not that the current order is not working or is inherently bad, though I do think there are some flaws with it. And I've been in contact with City Hall talking about some of those. It's not that I don't think they could be changed. But I also agree with Councillor Van Hazinga that having it all done by executive order, even if it's a very good executive order, is unilateral, fluid, and uncertain. And again, nothing specific to this mayor. It could even be that this works just fine for as long as this mayor is still in office, and then the next mayor has some cockamamie idea to change that order, and all of a sudden, we've got a different flag policy that the council didn't vote on. I think having this level of oversight allows for everything that the current executive order allows, but also allows us to make certain that it isn't subject to the shifting opinions of whoever happens to occupy the mayor's office. And for that matter, there are 11 of us. There's one mayor. It's not even just in terms of there's one of him and 11 of us, and so we're more diverse and we have more of a, chance of getting it right. But also, we can spread the heat. If there's an unpopular decision that people believe is right, the mayor could very easily feel that he is unable to make that decision because it will put too much heat on him. And again, I'm not talking about this mayor. Any mayor would feel that pressure, whether they ultimately decide to concede to it or whether they decide to resist that pressure. They're still going to feel it. But with 11 of us, that's kind of diffused a little. That's DIFF, not DEF, such that we can, if the heat's coming at all 11 of us, that's not as bad. We can shoulder that. Maybe some of us don't want to, I don't know, but I'm fine with that. And I think that's an advantage that this ordinance would have, is in not making one person solely accountable either. Not giving one person all the power, but also not giving one person all the blame for any unpopular decision that gets made. We all take the blame if we make a decision that's unpopular. So, that said, is there any further comment on the motion? Councillor Van Hazinga.
I don't think it's fair to say that we have a policy in place that's working. It's been in place for less than a month, and as far as we know, it has not been tested. That basically this discussion is the test about whether or not it's the right policy for the city. I think the biggest problems with the two main problems with the policy in place now are that it is inflexible. It decides ahead of time what is acceptable and what's not, and it's impossible to decide ahead of time every circumstance or every exception that should be included. There will always be something in the future that will come up, well, what about this? And then you have to change the policy. And then when you change and set the policy, there's no public input, there's no public forum. It's just a unilateral decision as it's structured now. And there should be a public discussion about it. There should be a forum where input is taken. So those are the problems with the policy now, and that's what this ordinance attempts to alleviate. It attempts to bring these decisions to the council as a public forum to address those concerns and also to make it flexible.
Ma'am, you do not have the floor. I raise my voice to be heard over. I will raise my voice to the volume I feel is necessary to maintain order in this chamber. Now, Councillor Van Hazinga, you have the floor.
That the way this policy is structured should be flexible to respond to different things that are unforeseen that come up. And I think that's one of the main advantages of it.
Thank you. And you raised one point that I'd just like to briefly touch on. The fact that if we want, under the current policy, as you said, somewhat inflexible and narrow, if we did find an exception that we felt needed to be made and the mayor agreed and he changed it, the more times that happens, the more it gives rise to the implication that there actually isn't a policy, that it's just, you know, that it is, in fact, completely ad hoc in the hands of one individual. And there's no clear metric for, you know, how often can you change a policy unilaterally before it's not really a policy at all, just a prediction of how you might feel about an issue down the road. I don't think that there's any intention on the part of our current administration to handle it that way. But I think that removing the possibility of that becoming a problem down the road is a good thing. That said, if there are no further comments, all in favor?
Aye.
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 In opposition? 3 in favor, 2 in opposition. It is recommended for passage. That concludes our business for this evening. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion and several seconds to adjourn. Seeing as it was a unanimous second, I'll say it's unanimous consent, and we are adjourned.